Hi guys, so today I'm going to teach you how to make a small batch of chocolate chip cookies. For this recipe, you're going to need butter, shortening, brown sugar, granulated sugar, an egg yolk, vanilla, flour, baking soda, baking powder, salt, and chocolate chips. This recipe is going to make 8 chocolate chip cookies. So to start, you're going to want to preheat the oven to 375 degrees. Next, you're going to take your butter and put it in the bowl. Now this butter's been sitting out for a while, so it's nice and soft. You want to make sure that your butter is softened. Next, you're going to take 2 tablespoons of shortening. I used vegetable shortening. They do make it butter flavored, which would give you a more buttery cookie if that's what you really want. But I just went with the vegetable. So I did 2 tablespoons of this, and I really packed it into the measuring spoon to make sure that I didn't have any air bubbles in there. So it all goes into the bowl. And next I added my sugar. So I have my packed brown sugar and my granulated sugar in there. And next I just kind of started mushing it together. I started pressing the butter up against the edge of the bowl to kind of incorporate the butter and the sugar together. You want to make sure that this is really, really well combined. You don't want any big butter chunks or any big sugar chunks in there. So the more you can kind of smear it around the bowl and get it all mixed together, the better. Next, we're going to separate an egg. So this is how I separate an egg. I crack it open and I put the yolk on one side and then I pour the yolk right into my hand so I can make sure all of the egg white comes off of the yolk. Then I just put the egg yolk in the bowl. Obviously, I have egg all over my hand now, so I have to go and wash my hands. And when I get back, I measure the vanilla right into the bowl. Now, you may want to be careful. You may not want to measure it right over the bowl, but we like our cookies very vanilla-y, so we added quite a bit. Sometimes we tend to add a little extra. Next, you mix it all together until it's all nice and combined. This one's a little easier to mix than mixing the flour or the butter and the sugar together. It comes to a nice, smooth paste. Next, we're going to mix together our flour mixture. So I've got my flour in the bowl. I'm going to add in my baking soda. And I'm going to add in my baking powder. And then I'll give it a little mix together so that I can make sure that it's all distributed. I also added salt. I almost forgot to say. I added some salt in there. And then I give it a mix. So you mix it well so that you don't have pockets of baking powder or pockets of baking soda. And then I added half to my butter mixture and I stirred that in until it was nice and well combined. Make sure that you scrape off the edges and scrape the back of your spatula. You don't want any flour chunks to get stuck to either of those. So now I added my other half of the flour and I kept on mixing. This is about when my arms started to get tired, so it made it really interesting when it was time to add the chocolate chips because I was starting to really struggle to get it all mixed together, but I made it work. And now that it's all combined, I add my chocolate chips and start stirring it together. My arm was super tired at this point, so I probably could have stirred it in a little better, but I gave up. So I cleaned off the rubber spatula just to make sure that there weren't any flour pockets on there, and I made sure that the chocolate chips were kind of evenly distributed, cleaned off the edges, and kind of formed it into one big lump. After I had it in one big lump, I went and got a knife. And once I had the knife, I cut it into 4 sections. This is how I'm going to kind of easily make 8 chocolate chip cookies. Otherwise, it's kind of hard to portion it out properly. So I took half of each of those 4 sections and I put them on the cookie sheet so that there were 8 equal cookies. I needed to spread them out well because obviously they're going to spread as they bake. So I'd say you want probably 2 inches between each cookie. You'll notice that I kind of move them around a lot just to make sure that they're evenly spread out. I had a little bit of dough left in the bowl, so instead of eating it, as tempting as it was, I just divided it up between the cookies to make sure that they were all about the same size. I didn't want them to get too small. I like big cookies. They're always good when they're nice and crispy on the edges and soft in the inside. So next I added some M&Ms. This is only if you feel like it. You don't have to. Tommy really likes M&Ms in his cookies. So I kind of poked them in on a few of the cookies and I left some plain. And then after that, I got them into the oven. So I put them in and I set the timer for 8 minutes. After the 8 minutes was up, I opened up the oven to check them out. They didn't quite look ready to me at this point. They weren't quite golden enough around the bottom edge, and I noticed that they were cooking kind of unevenly, so I spun the pan around and I put it right back in the oven, and I set it for another 2 minutes. These cookies are okay to bake for 8 to 10 minutes, depending on how crispy you want them. After the 2 minutes were up, I shut the timer off and I checked on my cookies and they looked perfect. So I took them out and I set them on the counter. Now, ideally, I would let these rest for a minute and then I would put them on a cooling rack, but they didn't quite make it that long. I hope you guys enjoyed this recipe. Let me know if you make it at home. I really love this one. This will not be the last time I make it.